Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak on this motion, and I thank my friend, the member for Berowra, for proposing it. My home, the Sunshine Coast, has been proud to boast many recipients of awards in the Order of Australia, and this year's 2017 Australia Day honours added more to that illustrious list. In support of the motion, I would like to tell the chamber about some of them. Kevin Carroll from Maroochydore, close to my electorate of Fisher, has been involved in the vital work of our nation's defence for almost 60 years. Mr Carroll spent more than 2 decades as an avionics technician and engineer in the Royal Australian Air Force. In that role alone, he was critical to the operational effectiveness of his RAF units, conducting flight line maintenance of instrumentation, communication and weapon systems. Mr Carroll went on to become a squadron leader in the RAAF, with many deployments, including the Australian embassies in Washington DC and Malaysia. His citation, however, lists his significant service to business as an advocate for Australian manufacturers. Professor John Newman of Badina was also recognised with a Member of the Order of Australia. He, like Kevin Carroll, served in our nation's armed forces as a soldier in the Royal Australian Engineers. Almost 60 years ago, however, he began the work for which he received his honour in roads and civil engineering. Following a number of roles in industry, Professor Newman began his own business, Pavement Management Services, which he ran for nearly 30 years. During that time, he took part in innumerable industry organisations. He was a committee member of the National Association of Testing Authorities, a board member of the University's Accreditation Board, Engineers Australia, and a fellow of the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation, among many others. More recently, Professor Newman has made a commitment to keep young people interested in the science of engineering. Finally, I'm pleased to tell the chamber about my good friend Don Moffat. Don is a Sunshine Coast legend, and I know that everyone in our community was delighted to hear that he'd been made a member of the Order of Australia. His citation lists his significant service to the community of the Sunshine Coast, and it's fair to say that this is an understatement. More than 1,000 people every year owe Don and his work a great debt of gratitude. In many cases, Madam Deputy Speaker, without his efforts, their very lives would have been in serious danger. Don is the founder of the Sunshine Coast Helicopter Rescue Service, Australia's first helicopter rescue voluntary organisation. As a young man in 1968, Don flew choppers over the jungles in Vietnam for the Australian Army. He knew firsthand what an enormous relief and a life-saving presence rotary wing aircraft could be for those who are injured or ill in hard-to-reach places. On his return to Australia, Don could see how Queensland's expansive land and sometimes isolated communities could benefit from that same help. As Don himself has said, if you have an accident and you're out on a property somewhere, there would be no better noise than to hear the whoop-whoop of those helicopter blades, because then you know that someone is coming to take care of you. In 1979, Don began the process of building the Sunshine Coast Helicopter Rescue Service with Queensland Government support. In 1985, he bought the organisation's first Jet Ranger helicopter for $500,000. Don continues as the Deputy Chairman of the Sunshine Coast Helicopter Rescue Service, and he has improved that service over that many years with increasing the number of helicopters that service has operated. But he doesn't rest there. Don has found time to pursue his passion for horse racing. He's been the Director of the Sunshine Coast Racing Unit Trust and the Deputy Chair of the Sunshine Coast Turf Club. In those roles, he was a significant part of getting lights and synthetic track installed at the club, which allowed it to become one of the very few nighttime racing venues in Australia. Don, you are an absolute legend and you are well deserved of the order.